My name is Grant Mercer. I am 47 years old, and for the past 12 years I have worked as a structural bridge inspector for the Illinois Department of Transportation. My job is simple in theory and unforgiving in practice. I crawl underneath bridges that carry thousands of cars every day, looking for cracks nobody else wants to find. Hairline fractures in steel beams. Corrosion hiding behind paint. The kind of invisible damage that, left unchecked, brings the whole structure crashing down. I thought I understood how things break. I thought I could see the warnings before anyone else. And then my wife, Lisa, spent 6 months disintegrating our 20-year marriage right in front of me. And I missed every single fracture until the morning she held up 2 swimsuits in our kitchen and asked me which one made her look more adventurous. We lived on the 9th floor of a brick apartment building on the north side of Chicago, the kind of pre-war walk-up with thick walls and cast-iron radiators that whisper and clank through winter nights. I had loved that apartment from the day we signed the lease in 2006, back when Lisa still laughed at my bad jokes and called me steady hands because I could fix anything from a leaky faucet to a busted deadbolt. By the spring of this year, she said it the way someone describes a piece of furniture they have grown tired of but cannot afford to replace. I should have heard the shift in her voice the night she got that phone call. It was a Thursday in February, cold enough to freeze the lake spray against our windows, and Lisa was curled on the couch scrolling through her phone when it buzzed with a message. She glanced at the screen, and something crossed her face. A flash of light behind her eyes, quick and involuntary. The kind of expression that does not belong to a woman reading a text from her sister. She tilted the phone away from me and stood up, walking toward the bedroom. I caught a fragment of the preview notification before the screen went dark. The name said Tyler, and the first line read, "Thursday works. I already booked the..." And then the rest disappeared behind her lock screen. When she came back, I asked who had texted her. She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly and said it was just Tyler Harper organizing a college reunion. Something about renting a cabin, nothing interesting. I nodded and went back to the game on television. But I remember the way her voice climbed half a note when she said his name. That tiny pitch change lived inside my chest for weeks, settling in like the first thread of rust inside a load-bearing joint. Tyler Harper was Lisa's college boyfriend from Ohio State. They had dated for 2 years before she transferred to DePaul, where she met me. I knew about Tyler the way you know about a scar on your partner's body. It was there, it had healed, and it was none of your business to press on it. But sometime around September, Tyler had resurfaced. Lisa mentioned him casually, saying he had moved to Milwaukee for a fitness coaching business and they had reconnected through an alumni page. That was the first red flag. The second came in October, when Lisa changed the passcode on her phone. We had always used the same 4-digit code, our old apartment number, and suddenly one morning my thumb did not work. She said she had updated it for security reasons. The third was a gym membership at a CrossFit studio 40 minutes across town, when there were 3 gyms within walking distance. She said the coaches were better. The fourth was perfume, a bottle of something French that cost more than our weekly groceries. She said she had treated herself. The fifth was the clothes. New dresses, new heels, a leather jacket still tagged in the back of the closet. The sixth was a second Instagram account under her maiden name, posting quotes about awakening and freedom. Each flag by itself meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern I recognized from work, the kind of progressive deterioration that precedes catastrophic failure. The morning of the swimsuits was a Tuesday in late April. Lisa came downstairs with her hair blown out and makeup set the way she used to do for date nights. She held up a conservative red one-piece and a black string bikini and asked which screamed freedom louder. I already knew about the trip. Tyler had invited her to a resort in Cancun. For days, 3 nights, old friends catching up. I had said nothing the week before because I was still processing. But standing in that kitchen, watching her hold up swimsuits for a trip with another man while wearing perfume I did not buy, something inside me reached its load limit. I set my coffee down and told her, in the same flat tone I use when I report a bridge deficiency, that if she went on that vacation with Tyler, we were done. Not fighting. Not separated. Done. Lisa froze for 3 seconds. Then a smirk spread across her mouth. She told me I was not serious. She called me steady hands and said I would be right here when she got back, because that was what I did. I told her she should listen carefully. She shook her head and turned away, already humming along to a playlist curated for the trip. She packed that afternoon. She kissed my cheek on the way out the door the way you pat a dog before leaving for work, told me not to wait up, and reminded me I had my tools and my Thursday poker night. The Uber carried her south toward O'Hare, and I stood at the window watching until the taillights disappeared. Then I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a manila folder labeled Plan M. Some men wait for the flood before building the boat. I had been building mine since October. 3 hours after Lisa's flight left O'Hare, I was sitting across from a man named Arthur Caldwell in a law office on LaSalle Street. Caldwell specialized in property law and tenant rights, and he had been holding my folder for 6 months. Inside was every document I needed: a lease assignment transferring my name as sole tenant, a notarized affidavit proving Lisa had abandoned the residence by voluntarily vacating for more than 72 hours without notice, a signed addendum from our landlord, Mr. Kowalski, who had always liked me better because I was the one who fixed the radiators and patched the drywall, and a sublease agreement installing a new occupant, effective once Lisa's departure crossed the 72-hour threshold. The lease had always been in my name, a detail Lisa had never questioned because she considered paperwork beneath her. When we renewed 3 years ago, I had quietly restructured the agreement with Kowalski, adding a clause about extended absence and tenant substitution rights. Lisa had signed the renewal without reading it because she trusted me to handle the boring stuff. Caldwell filed everything that afternoon. By the time Lisa's plane landed in Cancun, the legal architecture of her eviction was already under construction. I called my cousin Jenna that evening. Jenna was 27, a paralegal, sharp-eyed and blunt. She had watched my marriage decay from the outside with quiet fury. When I first told her about the plan, her only question was what took me so long. The new occupant was Helen Cross, 53, a retired school administrator who had lost her husband to cancer 2 years earlier and had been living in a cramped South Side studio while trying to rebuild. Jenna had found her through a colleague's church group. Helen needed a real home. I needed someone who could look Lisa in the eye without blinking. Everything was moving on schedule. Saturday morning brought the first photos. Lisa in the red bikini, reclining by a turquoise pool, cocktail in hand, captioned, "Finally breathing." I studied the image the way I study stress fractures. The reflection in her oversized sunglasses told a story she had not intended to share. The table behind the photographer was set for three champagne flutes, 3 linen napkins, and a man's wrist wearing a heavy gold watch. Not the cheap sport band Tyler wore in every photo on his own Instagram. Someone else was at that table. Someone with expensive taste and a reason to stay off camera. The bottle on the table was Dom Perignon, not the Modelo beer Tyler posted about every weekend. I called the resort, gave them Lisa's name and Tyler's, and asked to be connected. The front desk told me they had no guests under either name. The second photo came Sunday. Lisa on the beach, a different resort logo on the umbrella behind her. The first photo had been taken at a 3-star all-inclusive. This umbrella bore the crest of a 5-star property down the coast, the kind of place where a single night cost more than Tyler made in a week. Someone with serious money was funding this vacation, keeping his name off records, and buying my wife champagne. I forwarded everything to Caldwell with 2 words: move faster. Sunday evening, Helen arrived carrying a single suitcase and a box of books. She walked through the apartment with the quiet authority of a woman who had spent 30 years running a school building. She straightened the cushions Lisa had left scattered, wiped down the counters Lisa had never cleaned, and hung a watercolor painting above the mantel. By the time she finished, the apartment felt like someone actually cared about it. I gave her the keys and told her that whatever happened when Lisa returned, she should not negotiate, not argue, not raise her voice. Helen smiled and told me she had spent 3 decades managing angry parents at conferences, and a woman throwing a tantrum on a doorstep was not going to rattle her. Monday, Caldwell confirmed everything was filed and processed. Lisa's name had been removed from the tenant registry. Her Instagram post that afternoon was a boomerang of her spinning on white sand, Captioned, "This is what freedom feels like." She had no idea that while she performed liberation for her followers, the locks on her front door were being changed. Lisa's flight landed at O'Hare at 4:17 on Tuesday. I was underneath the Eisenhower Expressway overpass inspecting a concrete pier cap. My phone started buzzing at 4:52 and did not stop. The texts went from confused to angry to desperate in 40 minutes. Why would the key not work? Stop playing games. Call me right now. I did not call back. I had a pier cap to assess. Jenna called at 5:30. Lisa had tried her key. The spare in the mailbox, buzzed every neighbor, and finally pounded on the door until it opened. Helen answered. Jenna said Helen was magnificent. Calm, professional, the voice of someone who had done nothing wrong. Helen introduced herself as the current tenant and told Lisa that access questions should be directed to the property management contact on the lease. Lisa stared at Helen the way you stare at an optical illusion, unable to reconcile what she was seeing with what she expected. Then the shouting started. She said this was her apartment, her home, her life. Helen said she was the legal occupant and gently closed the door. Jenna told me Lisa stood in the hallway for 11 minutes, staring at the closed door, before she started shaking. Not crying, shaking. The full-body tremor of someone whose reality has shifted beneath them like tectonic plates. That evening, a man named Paul Weber texted me, identifying himself as Lisa's attorney, demanding I restore her access within 24 hours. Caldwell called Weber and dismantled his threats with surgical precision. Lisa had never been the leaseholder, had voluntarily abandoned the residence without notice, and had signed a renewal containing a substitution clause she never read. Weber filed an emergency motion. The judge reviewed our documentation and dismissed it before lunch. Wednesday, Weber filed a second motion claiming fraud and duress. Caldwell presented the signing record showing Lisa had been given a 7-day review period and had declined to have her own attorney examine it. Dismissed. That afternoon, Lisa arrived with a locksmith. Helen called the police, showed her lease and identification. The officers explained to Lisa that attempting entry without the tenant's permission constituted unlawful entry and escorted her downstairs. That evening, Lisa posted on Facebook that someone she trusted for 20 years had destroyed her life while she was finding herself. The comments were brutal. Her sister wrote that actions have consequences. Her college roommate told her she had made her bed. The narrative Lisa had been building was collapsing under the weight of what everyone else had seen for months. She texted me that night, saying she had made a mistake and asking to talk. I replied for the first time since she left. I told her she had not made a mistake. She had made a choice, and now she needed to live with it. Then I blocked her number. Thursday evening, I was at the apartment having dinner with Helen, a chicken casserole she had made from scratch, the first home-cooked meal in that kitchen in longer than I could remember. The buzzer rang. Lisa's voice came through the intercom, raw and desperate. Helen let her up and opened the apartment door. Lisa was wearing clothes from the trip, jewelry I had never seen, a bracelet and earrings that looked like they cost more than my monthly salary. Her eyes moved between me and Helen, and I watched the realization settle into her face like sediment falling to the bottom of a glass. She saw two people sharing a kitchen, sharing a meal, sharing the quiet ease of a life that worked. She whispered that I was sleeping with Helen. Helen told her that where she slept was none of Lisa's concern, and that what should concern her was that she was standing uninvited on private property. Lisa's composure disintegrated. She begged. She said she would end things with Tyler, come home, go to counseling. I told her there was nothing left to fix. She had broken it past the point of repair. Helen asked her to leave. Lisa looked at me one more time, searching my face for the steady hands she had taken for granted. The man who fixed everything quietly. She did not find him. She turned and walked to the elevator, and I listened to the mechanical whir of the cables carrying her down 9 floors and out of my life. Friday morning, Caldwell called with the kind of news that turns a personal disaster into something much larger. His investigator had identified the man at the resort table, not a random admirer. His name was Marcus Hargrove, owner of a chain of luxury car dealerships across the Midwest, married with 4 children, and under federal investigation for 18 months for odometer fraud, title washing, and tax evasion. Lisa had been one of his financial intermediaries. Caldwell's investigator found records of cash deposits into a personal savings account Lisa had opened without my knowledge, $32,000, all in increments just below the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. The pieces clicked into place. Lisa's expensive taste, the new clothes, the French perfume, the jewelry. It had not been about finding herself. She had been receiving payments from a man under federal investigation, funneling them through her accounts, and using the proceeds to fund a lifestyle she could never have afforded on her own. Tyler had probably been a convenient cover, a familiar face she could wave in front of me, while the real transactions happened behind champagne and reservations under names that appeared in no database. Caldwell told me spouses could be held liable for each other's financial crimes. That afternoon I called the FBI field office in Chicago and asked for the agent handling the Hargrove investigation. Special Agent Torres came on the line, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting and told me my cooperation would be noted. I hung up and sat in the silence of my rented room, thinking about the woman I had married 20 years ago at a courthouse in downtown Chicago, the woman who had been funny and sharp and honest. I could not reconcile that woman with the one who had taken money from a criminal and hidden it in a savings account I never knew existed. 3 weeks later, Torres called. Hargrove had been arrested along with 4 associates on federal charges. Lisa's name had surfaced during interrogation. She was facing charges as an accessory, with over $40,000 in traceable deposits and a claim of ignorance that was not holding up. Jenna called that afternoon to tell me Lisa had been arrested at her sister's apartment. She was in federal custody, telling everyone I was the only person who could help her. That evening, my phone rang from an unknown number with the hollow echo of an institutional phone system. Lisa's voice came through, small and fractured. She asked me not to hang up. She needed a lawyer bail money. She said she never meant for any of this to happen. I asked what she thought would happen when she accepted cash from a man the FBI was investigating. She said she did not know about any investigation, that Marcus told her the payments were for companionship. I repeated those words back to her and asked if she understood what she was describing. Silence. She asked for money for a lawyer. I told her I could not help. She said I was her husband. I told her I was her ex-husband. The divorce had been finalized 2 days earlier while she was being booked into custody. She went quiet for a long time. Then she asked what she was supposed to do. I told her it was no longer my problem, but if she wanted free advice, she should tell the truth, because it was the only currency she had left. I ended the call and turned off the phone. Helen told me I had done the right thing. I asked if she was sure. She said you cannot save someone who refuses to see the water rising around them. 6 months later, I was standing on the small balcony of the apartment, watching Helen arrange a window box of herbs. Basil, rosemary, thyme. Simple things that needed care and rewarded it. Caldwell called that morning with the final update. Lisa had taken a plea deal. 2.5 years in federal prison, full restitution. Hargrove received 12. Tyler, who turned out to have known about the money and served as a go-between, got 18 months. Helen asked how I felt. I told her the truth. Relieved, not because Lisa was in prison, but because the uncertainty was over. The slow collapse I had watched for years had finally reached the ground. The buzzer rang and Jenna appeared with Kevin Cross, Helen's son, a high school teacher on the South Side. They had met during the apartment transition and been seeing each other for 3 months. Jenna told me they had set a date for September. Helen's face lit up in a way I had not seen since the day she moved in, and she started talking about catering and whether the building's rooftop terrace could hold 40 guests. That evening, the 4 of us sat on the balcony eating pasta and watching the city lights come alive along the lakefront. Kevin thanked me for what I had done for his mother. He said after his father died, she stopped believing she would ever feel at home again. I told him she had saved me too. Sometimes the best thing that happens to a man is discovering he is stronger than the story someone else wrote for him. My phone buzzed. Tyler Harper. He wrote that he had heard about everything and was sorry. I showed the message to Helen, who raised one eyebrow. She asked if I was going to respond. I deleted the text and told her that chapter was closed. The skyline glittered against the dark water, and a warm June wind moved through the herbs on the window box. I thought about what I had learned from 20 years of inspecting bridges and 20 years of marriage. Both require constant maintenance. Both can look fine on the surface while rotting inside. And both, when they fail, reveal the damage was there all along for anyone willing to look. Lisa had left because she thought a better life was waiting somewhere else, paid for by someone else, built on cash and secrecy and lies. What she found was a facade, expensive and hollow and destined to collapse. Helen stayed because she understood something Lisa never learned, that real life is not about escaping the ordinary, but finding someone who makes the ordinary feel like enough. At 47, I was starting over in the same apartment with a woman who planted herbs on the balcony and never asked me to be anything other than what I was. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was exactly where I wanted to be. And the view from the 9th floor had never looked better.